Welcome to Living Well with MS, the podcast from Overcoming MS, the world's leading multiple sclerosis healthy lifestyle charity, celebrating its 10th year of serving the MS community. I'm your host, Jeff Alex. The goal of our organisation and this podcast is to inform, support and empower people with MS to lead full and happy lives. We're excited you could join us for this new episode. Make sure to check out this episode's show notes for more information and useful links. You can find these on our website at overcomingms.org/podcast or on whichever podcast platform you use to tune into our programme. If you enjoy the show, please spread the word about us on your social media channels or leave a review wherever you tune into our podcast. Have questions or ideas to share? Email us at podcast@overcomingms.org, or you can reach out to me directly on Twitter at JeffAlex. We'd love to hear from you. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to Living Well with MS on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And now, let's meet our guest for this episode. Welcome to the latest episode of the Living Well with MS podcast. This week we're talking about exercise tips for all abilities with Dom Thorpe. Dom Thorpe has been working with MS patients to help improve their lives through health and fitness coaching since 2008. He was raised by his mother, who had MS for as long as he can remember, and has made helping people with MS his career choice after seeing the effects MS had on her. He's a creator of the MS Warrior program, which has been completed by over 1,000 people with MS since its launch in 2018. So welcome to the program, Dom, and thanks so much for joining us on Living Well with MS.
Thank you for having me.
So to dive straight in, you've got quite an interesting background. Could you tell us a bit about how you became a fitness trainer and what was your path to becoming a fitness trainer?
So the fitness thing happened a bit by accident, actually, because I came to London. I say came, I'm not there anymore, I've just moved out. But I arrived in London in 2000 to do university, where my degree was in sort of an engineering design type thing. But my original goal was to design sports footwear. And so like trainers and things like that, like Nike Air and those kind of things. But because of that, there were various units in my course that were sort of sports specific. So they sort of lumped us in with the sports science students and occasional lectures here and there. And so I think that was where I sort of started learning a bit about fitness. But one of my jobs to keep me afloat throughout the university days and pay for my beer money, I suppose, was working in the gym. And by the end of university, I think I established that I probably wasn't a great designer, but quite enjoyed the fitness industry. And so I sort of moved from a part-time position into a full-time role, and it kind of went from there, really. But as a manager, and then after, when I sort of, I don't know if you want me to expand upon the mum bit at this stage in terms of how that went into my career, but there was a leap from gym management to wanting to run a disability-specific fitness company.
Okay, we'll get on to that in a bit. But but that is connected with what you're doing right now. So what are you doing now in the fitness space, and what's your online fitness enterprise now?
So, through a massive stroke of luck, I moved entirely online, actually, just a few months before coronavirus actually hit or struck. So I'd been doing, prior to that, face-to-face personal training, just traveling around London, visiting clients with all sorts of disabilities, but the majority of those clients would be people with MS because they could see the backstory of me and my mum having MS, which was what kind of led me into this niche, if you like. So that was where a lot of my experience came from seeing clients face to face. But the sort of knowledge accelerated massively when I started reaching out to an online audience and sort of speaking to a lot more people with MS. And that kind of enabled me to launch what was my first program for people with MS, which was the MS Warrior program. And it all kind of coincided as a bit of a fluke. there was the completely random stuff happening, right? That I had a client who had no sort of physical limitations at all. He was just somebody that met me from word of mouth. And I trained him for a number of years, and then he stopped training. And then he called me back a few years later and said, oh, my wife would like to also do a bit of this exercise. And so I was training them both, and I said, oh, Jen, what are you up to these days? Knowing that she'd previously worked in charities. And she said, oh, I'm now at the MS Society. And I was like, oh, right, interesting, because that's sort of what I do with a lot of my clients. And she was like, oh, right, interesting. Yeah. And again, another massive fluke. At the time, they were looking for a fitness instructor to present and deliver their online fitness videos. And she said, let me speak to so-and-so, and I wonder if we can get you in. And so, yeah, within a couple of weeks, they'd sort of brought me in. We were filming in the same studios that is Dragon's Den, which is like Shark Tank if you're from the US, filming the fitness videos. And then they launched them. And I think that sort of, again, helped sort of expand people's awareness of me. And yeah, so now everything's online now. I don't do any face-to-face anymore. And the MS Warrior program is one of them, but I also offer a program called the Custom Fit program, which is a more customized sort of one-to-one coaching approach as well, but again, done remotely. So, yeah.
Heads up, Living Well with MS listeners. This month is Movement March at Overcoming MS. Keep an eye on our social media channels for tips, videos and ideas on how to keep your body moving this month. And on a related note, have you joined any of our live movement sessions? Overcoming MS has partnered with Dr. Gretchen Hawley to offer our community live movement classes. Find out more on our social media channels and website, but more importantly, make sure you sign up so don't miss out. And so what is the connection with your mum then? So you say your mum had MS?
So yeah, my mum had MS as far back as I can remember, and she sort of, she was one of these sort of invisible illness MS people, if you like, initially. Right up from when I was a teenager, I just knew she had MS, but to me, it didn't really look like anything was going on. So I was quite naive in that respect, didn't know a lot about it. Until I came away, left home, and at that point, her sort of physical condition declined quite rapidly. And within the space of about 6 years, she'd gone from walking seemingly fine to being kind of in bed, unable to really move herself very much at all. And that was sort of the point at which she sort of, I'd visited her with my granddad and seen her in this state and recommended that the hospital come and collect her, because I thought this was not the way that someone should be able to live. You know, she was just having a carer coming 3 times a day, taking her to the toilet, feeding her and stuff. And I'd never seen this before, so I just thought this is not acceptable. And took her to hospital, left her there that night. And the next morning got a phone call from them saying that they thought she'd had a stroke. But after lots of tests and over many, many months, they established that it was actually a massive relapse, which had caused some brain damage through lack of oxygen to the brain. And from that point on, she spent the next 6 years in a home, basically motionless, being fed through a tube. And it was, you didn't really know if you could communicate with her. We would visit, we would say hello, awkwardly try and talk to her and tell her what's going on, but with no idea of, can she hear me? Can she understand? Is there are occasional reflex actions and stuff. But yeah, so, and eventually I lost her in 2012, by which point I'd already stumbled across the Fitness for Disabilities course that I didn't even know existed. I remember thinking at the time when I saw the course, I was thinking, well, disabled people can't exercise. What's this all about? But I went on the course and it completely opened up my eyes. It kind of blew my mind a bit, and I just thought, this is something I need to get into. So, and that was when I launched.
And so she wasn't your mother wasn't particularly encouraged to exercise when she was able to.
That was it. I mean, as we discussed earlier, back then the advice was to save your energy and not do any exercise for people with MS. And she'd gone to, I think, like a local aerobics class one time or something, Now, you must understand, my mum was someone that had never exercised. So for her, just a complete lack of understanding of what it feels like to exercise. And she, I think, I don't know this for 100% sure, but I think what she was experiencing was like the typical muscle pain that you get with lactic acid buildup in the muscles, so the burning sensation and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was an unfamiliar feeling with her, she put it down to MS, which is, something that we see quite a lot, and I'm sure you're aware of it. The question, is it MS or is it something else? And it's very easy to say, that must be the MS. So she tried it once and never did it again after that. So yeah, exercise wasn't something that she was aware
it's a difficult
could help.
one. I mean, I am familiar with exercise. I mean, I'm not somebody who went to the gym a lot at university. In fact, my son is looking at universities now, and he's looking at the same. I went to Leeds University, and he was asking about the gym facilities there, and I had to admit that I'd never actually been in the gym at Leeds University, but I had been rock climbing and running and other things. So, I'm familiar with exercise. But I mean, I have to say, if you've got MS, and it is different for everyone, but personally, certainly, if I work really hard on exercise, then it will affect my balance a bit and my walking a bit more so than prior to that, where I would just feel that burn and I'd be fine, but my legs would ache a bit or my arms would ache a bit. Or whatever. It is worse now, but that's not a relapse. That's something that you get over, in a couple of hours.
That's right.
So, and I think maybe that's where historically, sort of my father wasn't encouraged to exercise. That they were thinking it was sort of something that was starting a relapse, but it's not. It's just that your recovery is certainly worse. Than
I think that's partly to do with you've heard of Uthoff syndrome?
Yes.
Or Uthoff sign? Yeah. So when you're exercising, of course, the body temperature or the temperature of the core and the neurological system increases, which can exacerbate symptoms. Jelly legs and things like that. So, but the thing that I try and remind my clients and anyone that I speak to with MS is that it's temporary and you're not doing any further damage. And I think that's the important thing, because when someone tries that and they're like, oh, all of a sudden I came in here and I could walk and now I'm trying to leave the gym and I can't walk, as someone, and I've spoken to clients that have gone to the gym and then had to be carried out by the staff because their legs, which I can imagine that must scare the hell out of you if you don't know what to expect or that you're going to come away, a few hours later and be back to what is your current normal, I suppose. Yeah, it's quite scary.
OMS promotes evidence-based lifestyle modification for improving health with MS. And one of the pillars of that is exercise. So what's your belief on how increasing exercise and movement might actually correlate to improvements in MS symptoms? Do you see improvements in clients?
Yeah, I think so. It kind of goes, if I was to do a broad summary, I might say that we see improvements in how people feel, symptoms and things like that. I would often put that down more to the nutrition side of things, actually. But one of the things that we know, taking MS out of the equation, is we know if exercise is done properly, structured exercise, not just like walking the dog or things like, structured training sessions, with the goal of increasing your physical ability, we know people can improve their balance, get stronger, get more supple, faster, anything like that. And although there's a massive lack of sort of research into the effects of exercise, and we're starting to see more of it, but the effects of exercise for people with MS, the way I come from is we apply logic. Like we don't have any research suggesting that the typical thing or the common principles of exercise work any different for people with MS. We know you need to modify exercise. We know you need to be aware of things that we've just discussed, like the after effects of a training session, which happen for some people, not everybody. But the fundamental principles, and this is one of the sort of approaches that I take, we've got to remember that for more or less everybody, of whatever your condition, disability, chronic illness, the basic principles of fitness remain the same. To increase strength, you have to load the body with increased weights or resistance. To improve cardiovascular fitness, you have to get your heart rate up. To improve endurance, it's about doing things for longer. And the same principles apply to people with MS. And, in terms of sort of scientific evidence, I've seen this time and time again with people I've worked with. We see people finishing their programs stronger than when they started, or with better balance. But personally, I think there needs to be a lot more time, money, and or effort put into researching the subject, because there's a lot we don't know about how those methodologies might differ or need to vary.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because the drug companies are obviously funding most of the research because there's a financial benefit to them.
They're making money back. Yeah, exactly.
If Nike got involved maybe in the MS
well, that's it. I mean, and the bottom line is what you get is very small studies done by people like me, or like if one of the MS charities gets a smaller amount of funding that can be allocated towards this. We get these, they're hopeful studies, but they're not enough people, and probably not done for a long enough duration. So the data's not great, and it's difficult or not even ethical to do like a sort of double-blind controlled test where you can say, right, you're not allowed to exercise and you are, and we think the people that are going to be better off. But
and it's not exactly blind, is it? The people who are not exercising,
you can't do exercise without realizing it. And I think that to some degree you're going to get some sort of placebo benefits of, oh, I feel so much better. And I think that happens as well. Which is no bad thing, if you're doing exercise and you feel better, whether that's the placebo effect or genuinely being better, it shouldn't make a huge amount of difference, really. If something's making you feel better, it's good. But I know from working with clients that people will get stronger. I know they will, and I think this is as much down to nutrition as the exercise, they will feel more energy and less fatigued if they apply the right sort of principles. So yeah.
And could you sort of tell us a bit about the key elements of your MS Warrior program?
Yeah. So the MS Warrior program is sort of the lower cost one, which is it's like a DIY follow along. So it requires you having some element of motivation to stick to it. But what I give people are a series of home workout videos for those people that prefer working out at home, but also gym alternatives for those that do have a gym membership. And they will vary throughout. And the idea is that the exercises become more advanced throughout the 12 weeks of the program, on the assumption that people will have improved physically. They will be stronger or have better balance and capable of slightly more than they were at the start. So now I give them nutrition guidance as well. And it's a lot of that is a bit more focused on the weight loss side of things, because I see a lot of people coming in that have gained weight as a result of their MS, largely due to a drop in activity levels, and they don't really know how to address this. So I try and give them tips on that. But again, I think this is where we probably see eye to eye with OMS and my stuff, is the kind of the whole foods approach and trying to make sure that you're getting plenty of fruit and vegetables into your diet, because they are really the things that move the needle in terms of your general health and well-being. Mm-hmm. And again, sort of a low saturated fat approach. So trying to give people guidelines on that. And then there's I want people to finish the program more knowledgeable when they started. So yes, exercise videos, yes, nutrition guidance, but also an education component. And every day they wake up to found an email that arrives in their inbox at 5 a.m. with a mini lesson. And what I've tried to do is every day has a different lesson that covers various subjects, symptom management, mindfulness, principles of exercise, so that they finish the program far more knowledgeable and confident in their own ability to maintain their health going forward. And that's part of the motivation package as well. So those daily emails, I think if you read that thing first thing in the morning, it gives you a boost and should help you sort of adhere to the program throughout.
Yeah, it's not that I've done sort of various programs. It is a strange thing when you do something that is online and remote. it still makes a difference, actually. I don't know if it may be different people, but to try and do it completely on my own, I really have to diarise it. And I mean, I know that the person on the internet's not actually looking at me, or, you know, I could just lie and say I did it and you'd never know. But there is still something about that sort of daily email or that daily, this is what you're supposed to be doing today. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't, like, but it's just that motivation, isn't it? And it still works, even if it's remote. But yeah, I guess it might be for different people, but certainly for me, I think
you do. Yeah, you get different type of people, don't you? There are some people, and I know this, and this is why the custom fit program exists as well.
So custom fit is the level above MS Warrior.
Yeah, so that's the one where if you're not exercising, you're getting a phone call each week from somebody that's going to be saying, what what's going on? Why are you not exercising? Whereas with the Warrior program, although the daily emails are designed to be enjoyable, entertaining, and educational, and that you're meant to want to read the next days, to try and keep you engaged. I'm fully aware, there are people that will just stop opening them and stop doing it at some point throughout. And the goal is to try and minimize the number of people that do sort of give up. But with the custom fit, it's a bit different. It's quite hard to give up because you've got the accountability of the person. I have a couple of accountability coaches. They're people that have MS and they're personal trainers, so they'll be having weekly phone calls with the clients to support them and answer any questions. But also it's the fact that I know I'm going to be speaking to one of these guys, so I need to make sure I do my workouts, and it tends to motivate them.
And how do people
just?
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say some people just need to be told what to do. With something like MS and exercise, it's such a scary concept. You don't want to make things work. You don't want to do stuff that's going to damage yourself. So it's very common for people to completely shy away. So if you can just say, look, I know how you can do this. I've done it with tons of people. Just follow these steps. Do it this way. That is often just enough to spoon feed people the answers. And if you make it easy for them, they'll follow along. Try and remove all of the barriers, the little hurdles that someone would need to go to in order to do the exercise, and then it happens a lot more easily.
And how do your programs deal with different ability levels? Because presumably you're getting from wheelchair bound to completely running even.
Yeah, so the Warrior program, because it's a template style program, what we've got is 3 categories, A, B, and C. Category A is for people that will walk, Category B is for people that use assistance to walk, and Category C is for wheelchair users. So what that means is the exercises are firstly suitable for people in that scenario, designed to be safe and effective for someone using a wheelchair or crutches, but also designed to target the specific needs of somebody in that position. So someone who's walking with assistance, there'll be a bit more focus on kind of balance and mobility stuff there than obviously the person who's in the wheelchair, and we kind of assume that for them it's going to be more about core strength, upper body strength, being able to transfer and move yourself, propel yourself in your wheelchair, for example. So they're without having a completely customized program, which is what the custom fit is, this is kind of the next best alternative for a condition where the sort of the spectrum between different.
But you can still exercise if you're not you're not walking. It's not something where you would say give up on exercise.
Yeah.
You should still exercise.
No, that's right. And this is one of my pet peeves is when people think because their legs work they can't do exercise anymore. And I'll never stop hearing from people that say, well, I can't exercise because my legs don't work. And I think they're not the only part of your body. I mean, you can even do cardiovascular exercise using your upper body or your core muscles. It's perfectly doable. You just need to adapt things and think outside the box to some degree.
Yeah, no, I find that certainly having historically run as my cardio exercise. So I sort of ran like marathons and things, and so I ran a lot. And now running is very difficult for me. So it's that how you get that cardio. So I've got cycling is one, but also one I came across was just standing running. So you're not actually running anywhere. Your legs aren't, feet aren't leaving the ground, but you're still doing the running motion with your arms. And you can actually get your heart rate up quite high and essentially doing that. So yeah, you can still get cardio. And there's other things. I mean, there's swimming, there's cycling. There are all sorts of different things you can do. So if you could give us tips, I mean, so let's say 3 tips for people with MS of any ability who want to develop regular exercise into their life. What might those be?
So my first one is start with what you can do. And that's an approach I've taken ever since I started working with people with disabilities and chronic illnesses. It's very common for people to focus on, I can't run anymore, I can't do this. And I said, just say, forget about what you can't do. Let's just look at you and work out what you can. Okay, your arms work. You can stand up out of your chair. These are all things that if you can do them, that will make your exercise regime, first of all. So I'll always start with that because it's more empowering. If you're trying to work on doing something that you can't do with the goal of eventually being able to do it, it can be demoralizing at the start. But if you start with the cans, then you can build up, and perhaps once you've started building your regime, then you can start to look at, okay, now let's maybe address some of the things that I can't do and work out how we might be able to improve our ability and get to that. So point 1 is start with the can. Point 2 is remember that exercise is specific to the goal, and assuming you obviously employ the CAN principle first and foremost, but then think about what is it you want to achieve? Because we don't just do exercise for the sake of doing exercise because your doctor's told you that it's good for MS or because the government are telling you need to exercise or whatever. Think about what you want to achieve, whether that's, increased flexibility, increased strength, improved balance, cardiovascular fitness, whatever your goals are, that should determine what type of exercise you do. So, and this is where we see people go a bit wrong with MS. The doctors will say, just do something that you can do. And that person might they might be really focused on improving their lower body strength or their balance to help them walk further. Meanwhile, the doctor's saying, go and swim because you can do that. Okay. And you're absolutely right. Start with what you can, but then think, okay, but I want to increase the strength in my legs. What activities are actually going to increase that and improve my balance? And then let that shape your regime so that whatever you're doing has a goal and a purpose to get you to whatever physical improvements you want. So that would be my second point. And the third, I think, is start small and build up, because what we often see, someone like you perhaps who has previously been quite active and run and done, your rock climbing, we sometimes see people have their first relapse, struggle for several months, and when they feel like they're ready to get into it, they want to pick up exactly where they left off from, and it almost always ends in tears because the body's it's no longer used to doing it at that sort of level or intensity. And that's not to say that you won't be able to in the future, but we do need to build up. You've got to remember, you didn't immediately start at that point previously. You'd spent years building up to it. So it might be that you need to start low again, smaller duration, smaller intensities. And as your body's tolerance increases, then you can build up over time in a safe fashion that's less likely to make you feel bad and injure yourself.
Yeah, I'm certainly someone who used to sort of beast it at fitness. So just like, I've never been skillful at sports, but I always just, go for it to the max.
Put the hard work in instead.
But but you mentioned Utah's phenomenon, and that's I can't do that anymore. So and that's where I think one of the things where I was not diagnosed with MS, but it was the running. It was sort of like that running further, running faster, doing like fartlek exercise where you sort of do lots of short sprints, things like that. They would start to, my foot would start to catch on the pavement and stuff, and so that ability to just, like really go for it with exercise. That's definitely. I think you're right. You've got to, as much as we need to exercise, we also need to be sensible and stay within our limits as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It needs to be safe.
And I wanted to call out as well, because you mentioned MS Warrior and Sorry, I forget the name of the other one. The Custom Fit.
Custom Fit.
But also, you've got some free resources as well, haven't you? So there's, and I will link to those in the show notes. So if people want to have a try with you as a fitness coach, there are free resources as well as MS Fitness Essentials, so people can try it out first.
Yeah, definitely. Because one of the things that is apparent if you can't work, which often happens as a result of the MS, money's short. So I always try and make sure I offer a lot of free content, and those MS Essentials, there are online workouts on YouTube, access to my YouTube channel, videos that I filmed with the MS Society, but not just me. There are access to other, like there's some yoga stuff in there and some Pilates. So there's plenty of stuff for people to get started. If you're stuck and you're like, I don't know what to do, or I can't find any online videos that suit my physical ability. If you download those resources, there's plenty of stuff in there that will help and offer opportunities to try things.
Okay, so thank you so much for being our guest on Living Well with MS. And we're thrilled to learn about amazing work you're doing to encourage fitness to people with MS at all levels of ability.
Thanks for having me. It's been good to chat.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Living Well with MS. Please check out this episode's show notes at overcomingms.org/podcast. You'll find all sorts of useful links and bonus information there. Do you have questions about this episode or ideas about future ones? Email us at podcast@overcomingms.org. We'd love to hear from you. You can also subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Living Well with MS is kindly supported by a grant from the Happy Charitable Trust. If you'd like to support the Overcoming MS charity and help keep our podcast advertising free, you can donate online at overcomingms.org/donate. To learn more about Overcoming MS and its array of free content and programs, including webinars, recipes, exercise guides, OMS circles, our global network of community support groups, and more, please visit our website at overcomingms.org. While you're there, don't forget to register for our monthly e-newsletter so you can stay informed about the podcast and other news and updates from Overcoming MS. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next time. The Living Well with MS family of podcasts is for private, non-commercial use and exists to educate and inspire our community of listeners. We do not offer medical advice. For medical advice, please contact your doctor or other licensed healthcare professional. Our guests are carefully selected, but all opinions they express are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Overcoming MS charity, its affiliates, or staff.